We've seen Maverick fight super soldiers, armed bigots, mob enforcers, superheroes, and a crime lord. But we haven't seen him go against a 400-pound mountain of mutant massiveness. Yet. I've always had a soft spot for the X-Men villain called the Blob. Part of it, I won't lie, is because I see myself as a fat guy. I'm not huge, to be fair, but I'm definitely not blob-sized, but the thought is still there. I used my relative size to win fights when I was younger, or as a shield for someone smaller than me. But I also like the simplicity of the Blob. He has no flashy, complicated superpowers, no weird, extra-dimensional background. He's got no touching speeches or colorful costume. Fred Dukes is just a normal, if really large, guy who has always faced humanity's worst judgments. Not even because he's a criminal, or because he's a mutant, but because he's a big fat guy. So he has turned his bulk and his back upon the world. If he's going to be an outcast, then so be it. And there's something about that which has always appealed to me too. So seeing him here on the cover of Maverick issue 5 gets me pretty excited. Maverick's guns will do nothing to his bulk. His concussive blasts will barely move the Blob. Whatever his problem with Maverick is in this issue, I can't wait to see how Maverick handles it. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown episode 10.6, Maverick Hunters. Maverick is still in Manhattan after the adventure from last issue. But tonight, he's in the meatpacking district looking for some cold, hard cash. Spending a year sick in bed kept him from working and drained what money he did have, paying for food, shelter, and medicine. A lot of his old contacts have forgotten him, and he intentionally emptied most of his storehouses, because he was expecting to die. Financial woes aren't really a problem when you won't be alive in 6 weeks. As we know, though, that is no longer the case, and Maverick is unwilling to let Elena keep telepathically stealing them room and board at hotels across the globe. He wants to get back in the game. He wants to pull his weight. He wants some money. Below his rooftop hiding place, Maverick watches a drug exchange go down. 2 men bring out a suitcase, approaching another 2 men who have the money. Before the 2 packages can be exchanged, though, Maverick jumps off of the roof and lands between them. The impact charges him up, and Maverick shoves his superheated hand into the cocaine, destroying it. Then he snags the satchel of money. The men threaten him for this, naturally. He just destroyed $250,000 worth of coke. Big Louie is gonna kill him. Big Louie, Maverick replies, never paid him for the Dario affair. Consider this cash his payment, while the coke covers his accrued interest. None of the men are cool with this, and they attack Maverick with knives and crowbars. He takes them out easily, though, relishing the chance to burn off some of his anger. Why is he angry, though? Well, for that, we bounce back to this morning. Or the morning after, the way our last issue ended. Elena was up early, hard at work tracking Creed again. She references the recent events of X Factor, which I like as an X-geek, but all it means is that her one lead on Creed is gone. He is out in the wind, and he is good at covering his tracks. Maverick enters the room, wrapped in a robe and drying his hair. He greets her, and they kiss. Then he asks if her research has revealed Pushkin's whereabouts. But no, that's not what she was looking for. Elena says that she's hunting for Creed, and Maverick freaks. He thought that she had given up this doomed quest. No, Elena argues, she stopped hunting to help take care of him because he was dying. But if he isn't, then she's going to resume her quest. Maverick tries to talk her out of it, reminding Elena of how dangerous Sabretooth can be. Elena knows that. She is the one who was pulled from her dying mother's womb because Creed killed her. She knows better than most exactly how sick Victor Creed is, and she's going to make him pay. Elena adds that Maverick doesn't have to help her. She didn't take care of him expecting a repayment or a favor. This is her revenge, not his, and she'll go it alone if she has to. But Elena does need to know, will she be going it alone? Or will Maverick help her? Maverick shakes his head, still unbelieving. Then the thought finally hits him. Did she seduce him in order to win his aid against Creed? The accusation hangs in the air a moment, and then Elena slaps him across the face. Ouch, man. I know that I voiced a similar concern last episode, but I didn't say it to Elena's face. Yeesh. For a tactician, you sure didn't use any tact there, Maverick, old boy. So I like Gonzalez's structure here. He knows that he left us hanging with Maverick and Elena en flagrante delicto at the end of the last issue. But this is also a superhero comic where the audience wants fights and big action. So he opens the issue with some combat. This serves to immediately satisfy action fans, solve the very real problem of Maverick being cash-strapped, and lets the character burn off some steam, slyly allowing us to transition back into the interpersonal drama that Gonzalez set up. That said, there was no real danger to the opening scene either. While this does demonstrate Maverick's powers and skills, it's also not really exciting. I do enjoy Gonzalez playing more with Maverick's history, though. I might not have any more details about the Dario affair, but I would like to. Like Wolverine before him, Maverick's author is filling in and rounding out Maverick's history with interesting side characters and mysterious adventures. The flashback sequence does its job, re-establishing Elena's motivation, the dangers of her quest, and how Maverick feels about it. Remember, Elena's story hasn't been mentioned since issue 1 and was introduced in a whole nother one-shot, so audiences might not have known about it. Given Maverick's espionage background, I like him having concerns about Elena manipulating him, even if, in truth, she isn't. The real downside is that Leo Fernandez draws the flashback sequences, and Fernandez's style looks decently similar to regular artist Jim Cheung, but lacking even his polish at this time. I realized right off the bat that something was different about the artwork, but I honestly thought that Cheung had just really phoned it in for those portions. That's how close Fernandez is to Cheung's style. Or maybe the inker, Andrew Propoy, had been given some page layouts but not finished pages, so he had finished them, explaining the uneven artwork. But no, neither of those ideas are right. We've just got a totally different artist. If you could guess, I'm not terribly impressed here. These pages aren't bad. The layouts work, the characters do act, and I can follow the story well. But they lack that finish that I expect from not just a published comic, but from a book with Jim Cheung on artwork in general. In the present time, we join Maverick at a bar, where he's hoping to do some drinking and thinking. He requests a Hefeweizen beer, but the bartender is as clueless as I am. The other older bartender recognizes the name, but all he's got is Tucker. Maverick isn't impressed by that, but it'll serve his purposes. He sits at the bar, but another patron slams his pitcher on the counter. He paid good money to listen to the song that's playing on the jukebox, and he wants to listen to it. So shut up about your namby-pamby German beers. The camera pulls out to reveal Frederick J. Dukes, otherwise known as the Blob. Fred is a big guy, taller, wider, and certainly rounder than Maverick. He leans on the bar, questioning Maverick's choice in beer and German accent, which is something that no one has ever brought up about Maverick. What? Blob asks. Is he some kind of Nazi? Maverick's eyes thin. Do not call him that. But this only serves to egg on the bully that Fred is. He pulls a cigar from his shirt pocket. Oh, did he strike a nerve, you Nazi punk? Maverick then slams a fist on the counter, charging up his powers, and then snaps the cigar in half. No one calls him a Nazi, you idiot. Well, no one insults the Blob and lives! Other than, like, every superhero that he's ever faced, but whatever. The bartender can see the fight brewing, that's a beer joke there, and cocks some kind of rifle. If they want to fight, they can take it outside. Blob is happy to oblige. He swings a massive arm and swats Maverick out through the front window. Gonzalez uses the Blob slap to transition back to Elena's slap. She didn't say anything to Maverick. That slap said it all. Maverick realizes how hurtful his question was, although he doesn't apologize for it. Instead, he asks Elena to consider his past. Trusting people that are close to him has hurt him before, drastically. And sure, Elena gets that, but it doesn't change that after all that they have been through, Elena thought that they were past this kind of crap. Maverick argues that he may never be over it. So long as Janetta's memory haunts him, Maverick doubts that he'll ever fully trust another person ever again. He isn't even comfortable with the amount of knowledge that Elena knows about him. She doesn't like having his past in her head either. Wait, is that why he doesn't want her to go after Creed? Is he afraid that Creed will get all of Maverick's secrets from Elena if she fails to kill him? No, Maverick replies. He's legit concerned for her. He reminds her of Birdie, the last telepath to hunt Creed, and how she became his slave. He doesn't want that fate for Elena. There are some things worse than death. But even knowing that, Elena still wants to have her revenge. Maybe she's stupid, maybe she's crazy, but this is her choice to make. Putting on his armor, Maverick explains that he's fine with her hunting Creed. He just doesn't want her to do it angry. Her desire for revenge will cloud her mind and her judgment, make her lose her objectivity. She'll miss Creed's obvious manipulations, and by then it will be too late. Oh, she replies, like you and Pushkin? Which isn't even close to being the same, Maverick argues. Pushkin will come after them again. Catching Sickle was a blow that he will not allow to go unpunished. He will be back to ruin their lives, but Creed has no interest or intent to go after Elena or Maverick. If you leave him alone, then they can live out the rest of their lives relatively peacefully. But if you go poking Sabretooth, he will stop at nothing until he sees you bleeding. Elena doesn't buy that. The reason that Maverick wants Pushkin is because Pushkin hurt him where he's weakest. His heart, his memories, the things that he wants so much to protect. Now Maverick wants to hurt him back. This defense-only argument is a smokescreen, and Elena can see through it. Having hit too close to home with that, Maverick decides that, you know what, he needs some air. He excuses himself, heading out into the New York night, which brings us narratively back around to where we started. While Gonzalez's language for our two leads feels pretty stiff, I like some of the insights that this scene offered. Maverick's mistrust of Elena is in character, if rude, and I don't like that he fails to apologize for insulting her. He may have fully understandable reasons to mistrust others, but that doesn't mean that he gets to go around insulting his allies, being a jerk. I hadn't considered that Elena's role in his brainwashing allowed her to see his past. Maverick is a very private man, as we've seen, so Elena knowing all of his history must be pretty disarming. It's also probably part of the reason that she slept with him. Elena knows his past and his pain better than anyone else still alive. I also like her comparing her Sabretooth quest to Maverick's Pushkin quest. I would argue that both villains need to be taken down, though. Maverick might have a point about Creed ignoring them, but he will still be free, killing whoever he feels like, whenever he feels like it. Killing Creed and Pushkin is dangerous and maybe stupid, but doing so would make the world a safer place. Working together, Maverick and Elena might be able to take them down, too, but that would require Maverick trusting her with his life. And we ain't there yet. Where we are is outside of that bar, where Blob's slap has charged Maverick up. He's been spoiling for a real fight, and now he's ready to rumble. Blob charges at him, although his drunken steps are uncertain. Maverick super punches him, and he actually moves the Blob back. That was unexpected. Blob plants his feet, fully confident that once he's grounded, nothing can move the Blob. Maverick super punches him again, and this time, despite the charge, it does nothing. Blob then wraps his arms around Maverick, suffocating him in his chest. Grossed out, Maverick switches tactics. If punching doesn't work, well, his hands can burn too. He presses them against the Blob's chest and burns 2 handprints into the flesh there. Shouting in pain and surprise, Blob lets him go and Maverick sprints away. He plans to lead Blob away from the bar, kicking himself for goading the villain in the first place. He flew off the handle with Elena, flew off the handle with Blob, and look what it's gotten him. He's been letting his self-control slip, and he needs to do better. Maverick leads Blob to a junkyard, where he stops for a moment to insult him. Maverick needs a recharge, and that means getting hit. The Blob obliges, punching Maverick, and he lands on a stack of debris. He barely missed several sharp pieces of metal with that landing. Maverick makes a mental note to be more careful when charging up. He can be crushed or stabbed or sliced still, even with his powers active again. The Blob moves in, swinging with all of his weight, but Maverick is faster. He uses his speed to run into a nearby structure. It kind of looks like a parking garage. He runs upstairs until he's several flights up. The Blob swats aside chunks of debris, looking for his prey underneath. He finally stops under a series of holes in the ceiling, and that's just what Maverick has been waiting for. He jumps down, adding momentum to his now charged-up feet. The impact actually shoves the Blob into the ground, and Maverick bounces back up like he had jumped on a trampoline. He prepares for another super kick, hoping to finish this fight, but suddenly his powers drop out. His kick does nothing but leave him open, and the Blob swats at him. Maverick manages to dodge, but he needs a new plan now. So, he chucks a grenade into the air, thanking his tech expert Isabel, and then jumps out of a nearby window. The resulting blast collapses the structure onto the Blob, giving Maverick more than enough time to leave. He returns to the hotel, but it's late at night by now. The place is dark, but Maverick shouts for Elena anyway. He's reconsidered, and he'll help her in her hunt for Sabretooth. But she doesn't respond. He turns on a light. She is gone, and has been for hours. The only clue left him is a note. In it, Elena says that she has a lead on Sabretooth, and she's pursuing it. She tells Maverick to take care of himself, and not to follow her. Maverick crushes the note in his hand, and we end the issue. At first read, I didn't care much for this fight. Maverick is totally right when he says that provoking the Blob was stupid. He was angry at Elena and himself, and he lashed out, wanting a confrontation. He just so happened to pick it with another superpowered individual. The Blob's reason for approaching Maverick is lame as well, but totally in character for Fred. He's shown to be the only person in the bar before Maverick enters it, and he ruins his night of drinking. He's got at least a pitcher of beer in him, he's had his peace disturbed, and he's a mean SOB anyway. This is stupid, but hey, so is the Blob. I do like Maverick realizing how dumb his behavior was, though. I like Maverick's process of fighting the Blob, changing tactics where and when necessary. I don't like the, oh no, I need a new plan, oh I know, a grenade, that he pulls out at the end here. It doesn't feel clever at all, unlike the jump down on the Blob with super feet plan. The fight ends so anticlimactically, but it's not like there were any stakes or weight to the fight to begin with, so it's not really bothersome, but it's still bothersome. Elena leaving at the end stings, if only because Maverick decided that he would help her after all. She started down the revenge road on her own and is willing to keep walking it. I just hope that she'll be okay. Thankfully, we won't have to wait long to find out. Issue 6 of Maverick opens on a familiar scene. Victor Creed, still a member of Team X, smashes through a wall and stops his teammate, Logan, from killing the Soviet super soldier Epsilon Red. Relieved, Logan flees from the room, but Epsilon stops Creed. He can tell that the man is colder, harder than his ally. Perhaps he can do Epsilon the courtesy of killing him, and spare him the suffering that is his life. Creed shakes his head at this. Nah, you want it too badly. Then he turns to Epsilon's pregnant wife. Creed has another way to bum him out. He fires a single shot. Darkness envelops the mind of the young Elena Ivanova, who was still in her mother's womb at the time. She could hear the doctors discuss removing her, and she snaps awake. It's the middle of the night. She's covered in sweat and panting. Elena rests her face in her hands and curses Victor Creed. Gonzalez opens issue 6 here to remind older readers and educate new ones, who may have missed the Maverick one-shot, about Elena's motivation. It's really one thing to have Elena say that she hates Creed and maybe explain her past. It's another thing entirely to see it, like she did, to experience it in real time. The memory hasn't faded at all, and it is just as potent today as it has been for all of Elena's life. We, and Maverick, might wonder at how Elena can't have gone over this yet, but we've now been shown why. To Elena, this memory is something that she relives. It's not old and forgotten, covered over by mental cobwebs. She experiences this again every night, feeling her mother's terror and pain, and has done so continuously throughout her life. It's really no wonder that she wants Creed dead. That said, the scene doesn't match what we previously saw in the Maverick one-shot. The basic gist is the same, but some big details are different. Here, Creed smashes a wall down to reach Logan and Epsilon, where in the one-shot he just walked into a room. He and Logan are being pursued here with energy blasts following Creed and earning return fire. Their dialogue is different as well, although I have to admit that Gonzalez copies Hama's speech patterns for Creed pretty well. The changes do make the scene more dramatic and impactful, I can't argue that. But they're still wrong. Elena's memory is a direct copy of what her mother experienced. This scene should run exactly the same every time it happens. An argument can be made that we self-edit our memories, so I suppose that Elena could have added or changed elements over time as the years have progressed. But to have changed so much in only, the 3 weeks that have passed since the one-shot? And why would her memories change into this? Gonzalez clearly read the one-shot, as he's referenced it several times over the course of this series. But maybe he didn't keep a copy on him when writing the actual script. It's also possible that this comic was written in the Marvel style, with only an outline and no actual script, or perhaps Jim Cheung didn't have the issue on him to reference, hence the laser fire. There are a number of explanations outside of the story for why this has changed. I just don't like any of them. Despite my continuity complaints, this scene does do its job. We are caught up on Elena's past and her motivations, and we know what will drive her into her upcoming confrontation with Sabretooth. For a new reader, this scene would serve to catch them up pretty nicely. The story moves to Kissimmee, Florida, to a clinic. Maverick once saved the life of retired Navy SEAL Dr. James Keller, who operates this clinic. Maverick brought Brian Johnson here for a checkup and got one himself. His powers acting up has got him nervous. Is the legacy virus getting worse again? Dr. Keller explains that Maverick is straddling the line between remission and relapse. His health could go either way at any moment. His mutant power seems to be boosting his immune system, although the doctor isn't sure why that's the case. So, we've got a hard 50-50 on if Maverick's gonna die soon. That's great. What about Brian, then? Brian has been skipping his appointments, making it difficult to establish a health record for him. This is actually why Maverick is here. The kid has been complaining about migraines, and he wanted to make sure that he would get looked at by a doctor. Dr. Keller gives Maverick the good news first. Brian's bronchitis has cleared up. Oh, that's why he was coughing so much in issue 4, not the legacy virus. Why do I think that's so lame? Anyway, the virus is spreading through Brian's neural network. That's why he's having the migraines and struggling to control his powers. Eventually, the virus will consume his entire cerebral cortex, and Brian will die. Unfortunately, Brian's mutant physiology makes it impossible for Dr. Keller to know when this could happen. So, that sucks. Dr. Keller volunteers to tell the Johnsons about it, but no, Maverick will do it. He's been their point of contact on all this legacy virus stuff. He should be the one to give them the news. Brian knocks on the door and he enters the room, bored out in the waiting room. His sudden arrival catches Maverick without his mask on for the first time in weeks, and Chris sees that his scars are gone. What's going on there, Maverick? Dr. Keller excuses himself politely. For a moment, Maverick considers telling Brian a story, some lie, to cover his tracks. Ultimately, though, he decides to come clean about his remission. Brian's reaction is understandably mixed. He's happy that Maverick is doing better, but he's hurt that he would keep this from him. What, did he think that Brian wouldn't be happy for him? And of course not, Maverick was trying to protect him. Oh, so Maverick thought that Brian would fall apart if he was the only one with the legacy virus? Well, guess what, Maverick? Brian is no one's charity case. Maverick's chatterbox chirps, and he picks it up. A man named Gregor is on the other end, and Maverick asks if he's heard from Elena recently. And yes, she did contact him that very morning. So did Maverick's old Team X partner. Oh no. Creed wanted some of Gregor's maps, so of course he sold them to him. Gregor half expected Creed to kill him no matter what he did, but he paid for the maps and left. Maverick tells Gregor to bolt the door and fucking hide. He'll be there as soon as he can. He hangs up and turns to Brian, ready to apologize for needing to leave. But Brian gets it. Duty calls. Just take him back home first, pal. I get so much of a kick out of knowing the locations in this book. I live in the greater Orlando area, so I know where Brian's new home in Altamont Springs is and where Kissimmee is. I have lived in Altamont Springs. Marvel has always been set, quote, in the world outside of your window, end quote, but I never grew up in New York City. The Avengers, the Fantastic Four, even the X-Men were so far away from me as a kid that the phrase never really applied to me. I mean, at least the X-Mansion was in the countryside of Westchester County, so I could imagine it being placed in the woods of rural Ohio. But knowing, even vaguely, where these stories are happening feels so cool. Plus, my favorite barbecue place is Keller's Barbecue, so I like to imagine that Dr. Keller retired from the medical field and started his own line of barbecue joints. Nice. I like Dr. Keller in general because he exemplifies the kind of life that Maverick has lived as well. Gonzalez continues to shape Maverick's backstory with these kinds of tertiary characters, even if we don't get to see how or why Maverick first interacted with them. It adds more history to him without dedicating a huge amount of pages to somebody who's ultimately just a side character. But it's also still more interesting than Maverick just bursting into an emergency room and going, "Hey Doc, I need a physical." Although I guess that would be kind of funny. I really like the diagnosis on Maverick and Brian. Medical sci-fi is kind of my thing, and this leans right into it. You see, Maverick's health tying into his powers makes sense to me. Each type of cell in the human body can only copy itself so many times before things go wrong. Miscopies, or mutations, can lead to weakened cells, or cancerous growths. Basically, the cells fail to copy properly. But Maverick's power is to absorb kinetic energy, and the law of the conservation of energy states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, merely transformed. Theoretically, Maverick's body could take the energy that he's absorbing and store it in his cells, allowing them to have more energy so that they can copy properly. In theory, this could boost his immune system and could account for his suppressed age, too, if it wasn't already established that Weapon X gave him a formula for that. But we're going to ignore that because it's way less interesting and ties in less well. However, the legacy virus specifically attacks the X gene, eventually causing power flare-ups or dropouts that will kill the infectee. So if the virus kills enough of Maverick's mutant cells, he won't be able to store energy to fight off the infection, hence the potential danger of relapse or remission. But if Maverick can stay healthy and charged, his body could stay in remission. Similarly, Brian's mutation allows him to generate bioelectricity, so it makes sense that his virus is attacking his neural pathways, upon which electricity moves. This is totally armchair sci-fi, but I like that there's some sense to it. The reveal of Maverick's remission to Brian is very anticlimactic, though. That's something that I've noticed throughout this run. Gonzalez constantly sets up these large confrontations, but then totally deflates them as well. Isabel risks her relationship with her daughter to save Maverick, and she just shows up and things are finished. Ivan Pushkin does so much work to get Maverick under his control and use him, and Maverick just stops being brainwashed. Maverick struggles to battle the Blob and come up with a clever way to defeat him, but his powers short out. How will he beat him now? And he just chucks a grenade out. We've had this moment with Brian, building since issue 1. And all it comes down to is a fairly reasonable conversation. Okay. Part of the problem with this is that Gonzalez doesn't pay off any of the drama that he introduces. A writer needs to throw problems at their protagonist, and these can be physical problems like punching the Blob, natural problems like climbing a mountain, or emotional problems like admitting a lie to the teenage boy that you've taken under your wing because you're both dying of the same illness. But when all of those plot lines just end with no meaning or resolution or change, then there's no point to them. What did it matter if Maverick did or didn't tell Chris, no swearing, Brian, if all he's going to do is shrug and then keep on living his life? There's no point to the story then. No one grew or overcame anything. Now, if Maverick told Chris about his remission a few issues ago, and then Chris ran away from home because he felt alone and depressed, and then a loosened New York Sabretooth picked up Maverick's scent from Chris, and took him hostage, or threatened to kill him unless Maverick showed up and they fought, or maybe exchanged Chris for Elena, then that'd be something. Or if Maverick told Chris, and this encouraged Chris to keep a dangerous secret from Maverick, that'd be interesting. Or if Maverick's failure to deal with the Blob led to the Blob following him and joining with Sabretooth in order to beat him up. Actions should have consequences, and all of Gonzalez's endings make sense and play out sensibly, but that's boring. I don't want boring. This is a superhero comic. I want over-the-top everything, baby. Anyways, we move to New York City, where we meet Gregor Kokoschka in person. He is a former KGB tactical analyst who moved to the U.S. after the fall of the Soviet Union. He's one of the few people in Elena's contacts and has been working as a freelance cartographer in the private sector, as well as New York City's Department of Public Works. He has lived a safe, quiet life, and now regrets helping Elena. He only hopes that he hasn't signed his own death warrant. Cracking wood signals that he has as Sabretooth breaks into the apartment. Now that Gregor has laid the bait for Rico, which is Sabretooth's nickname for Maverick, he nicknames almost everyone, he doesn't need Gregor anymore. Gregor's pleas for mercy fall on deaf ears as Creed attacks him. Later that night, Maverick is back in New York and on his way to Gregor's apartment. While there were only a few people that Elena could contact, Maverick still thinks it's weird that Gregor would have known about Sabretooth's whereabouts. He's a cartographer, not a spy, and it's not like he works for the government. This whole thing stinks, and it smells like a trap. Maverick picks up the pace, racing up to Gregor's. Once he opens the door, he finds a situation. A carefully wounded Gregor lies on top of his own drafting table, a map on his chest. Wires stretch across the room and around Gregor's body, creating an intricate cat's cradle. If Maverick moves a wire, he risks choking Gregor to death, or setting off the anti-disturbance mine that's been tied into the design. Written on the wall above Gregor in possibly his own blood is the words, "Come and get me, Rico, if you dare." And Maverick entering the room triggered a timer on the explosive. Say what you will about Victor Creed, he isn't stupid. Maverick moves out and around, setting up on the fire escape. He extends a thin rod with a hook on one end. He then snakes it through the maze of wires and disarms the bombs. Do you see what I mean about Gonzalez setting up a interesting situation that should take skill and intelligence and cunning to work through, and then Gonzalez just resolves it? Maverick pulls out a hook, disarms the bomb, and everything is fine. There's no real weight or meaning or meat to this, it just happens. Maverick then examines Gregor's body, which he finds still breathing, but on the brink of death. He calls an ambulance and then takes some time to study the map. Creed has marked an X on it, and this is the only lead that Maverick has on either Elena's location or Sabretooth's. He's going to have to go there, but he doesn't have to be stupid about it. Leaving Gregor's place, Maverick puts in an order with Isabel, who protests about helping him. But who cares, right? There are no repercussions to this decision, so she accepts the job and sends him the stuff. See what I mean? This is a great moment of potential drama. Isabel can't risk losing her daughter, but rather than stand firm and make Maverick's mission even more dangerous and thrilling, she goes, okay, sure. No biggie, Mav. That's not interesting. That's boring. I hate that. I did dig the Gregor scene, though. Sabretooth manipulating Elena, Gregor, and now Maverick is pretty great. Creed has never been just an animal, as much as he likes to use that argument to justify his actions. He is an intelligent, cunning hunter, and he's leading all of his prey to a kill zone. Setting up that cat's cradle, which he knew Maverick would take the time to disarm, allowed him more time to get into position for Elena without Maverick breathing down his neck. But Elena visited Gregor, and then Creed visited Gregor. Creed visited Gregor knowing that Maverick was on Elena's trail. So he knew that they would talk, which would then lead Maverick to Gregor so that he could then get caught up in Creed's trap. But how did Creed know to go to Gregor? Has he been following Elena? Was he already hunting her as she was hunting him? And if so, why not attack her now? He has no real reason to torture Maverick, other than pleasure, which he would do, but I still don't know how or why Creed got onto Elena's trail at all. Plus, we're given no reason as to how or why Creed knows about Elena to begin with. In truth, and I'm surprised that there's no editorial mention of this because Kelly Corvese edits both of these books, Maverick's book is referencing X Factor issue 138, which I mentioned last episode. In it, Omega Red tried to capture Creed in order to trade him to Elena for the carbonadium synthesizer. Creed beat Red, but this alerted him to Elena's existence and her desire to kill him. That is why he started to hunt her, even if this book doesn't care to tell us that. It's also why I don't include X Factor issue 138 in my Maverick collection, despite the fact that it affects this book. There's no editorial specific mention leading us there, or even a reference to that conflict. It really just seems like Sabretooth could somehow sense Elena was on his trail. And even if that was the case, I still don't know how Sabretooth would know about Gregor to go to him after Elena left anyways. We then move 70 stories down, into the tunnels below New York City, where Elena is on the hunt. She has waited hours for the tunnels to clear of workers so that she can move unimpeded. But this isn't the best area for her confrontation. There is so much rotting organic material down here that the air is filled with toxic fumes, forcing Elena to wear a breathing mask, something that Sabretooth's healing factor will allow him to go without. Those same fumes are flammable, so Elena can't use any form of explosive weaponry either. All that she has is her telepathic powers and her synaptic disruptor. And I would argue that that is not nearly enough to even bother Creed. Elena stumbles through the darkness until she bumps into a dead and displayed body of a worker, Creed's way of taunting her. She calls out into the darkness, rattled. "Let's get this over with, Creed. Show yourself." Sabretooth drops down from the darkness, a gleaming smile on his face. No need to be brave, Frail. He could smell her fear from a mile away. There is righteous indignation on Elena's side, and a playful cruelty on Creed's, as the two taunt one another. Elena fires her disruptor at Creed, but he dodges it easily. But now his blood is up, and he starts growling. Miles away, and above all of this, Maverick lowers himself into the tunnels. He takes a moment to memorize the cables that he passes by, just in case he needs that information, and given that Gonzalez is making a point of it now, I'm going to say that he does. And then he touches the ground. He seals his battlesuit, protecting himself from the gases, and heads to the kill zone. Elena's fight with Sabretooth is not going in her favor. The big man closes in quickly, tearing the disruptor from Elena's hand. She tries to put some space between them, and she psy-blasts Creed. That little trick don't work no more. Ever since Wolverine stabbed Sabretooth in the brain, the glow, as he calls it, has no effect on him. He charges at Elena, who scrambles to a nearby ladder, and then he slashes at her back. She falls from the ladder, screaming. Close by, Maverick suddenly drops to his knees, a mind-numbing blast of pain hitting him. He doesn't realize where the pain came from, but he knows that he can't stop yet. Maverick presses on until he reaches the X that Creed had marked on the map, and finds a triumphant Sabretooth standing over Elena's body. Is she alive? Is she dead? I sure as heck can't tell from here, but it isn't looking good. If the way that I talk about Sabretooth implies anything, I hope that it's a fearful respect for the character. When I first started to read Uncanny X-Men, Sabretooth was living in the X-Men's danger room, either tamed by Wolverine's impromptu lobotomy or recovering from it. It was only a few issues later that Creed manipulated Tabitha Smith, aka Boom Boom of X-Force, into freeing him, and the X-Man Psylocke nearly died attempting to save her and stop him. Then, as I began to buy back issues, I saw Sabretooth as one of the bravest and most self-sacrificing X-Men in the Age of Apocalypse, then immediately going to one of the most cunning and deadly threats in the main timeline. If the freaking X-Men struggled to trap, and not even kill, but trap Sabretooth, then there is no way that Elena, on her own, could manage this. Then add in Sabretooth choosing the location of the fight, and you've definitely got a losing situation. Elena is at every disadvantage possible here, and she doesn't know the lay of the land. She should never have gone forward with this attack. To be fair, she is blinded by hate and revenge, and Maverick warned her about emotions clouding her thinking. Obviously, I like Creed manipulating Elena and Maverick. This trap does everything to favor him, and that's smart work. This is such a small thing. Okay, so Maverick's mask has this forehead piece on it. It's got a jewel or lens in the bottom center, right above his eyebrows in a diamond shape, which then extends upwards until it pokes out above his mask. And it turns out that lens is actually a small headlamp. That's so cute. And the coloring on it glows. Oh my god, thank you, Kevin Sommers, for making it glow. I've been wanting that kind of lighting detail from you for issues now. Jim Cheung and Leo Fernandez co-pencil this issue, Fernandez handling the doctor scenes. It looks pretty much the same as the last issue. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. It's fine. To my horror, though, we still have lettering issues. What the hell, man? When Maverick finishes his call with Gregor, he hangs up and we get a click sound effect. But then Gregor's final word bubble comes from Maverick's mask after the sound effect, making it seem like he's still on the line despite Maverick hanging up. And when Maverick disarms that bomb, there are 2 bleep sound effects, one of them a clearly unfinished first attempt at the effect. We are halfway into this book's life. That's 6 months of work, and I am shocked to still find lettering problems. Next week, Maverick goes glowing fist to razor-sharp claw as he battles Sabretooth, with Elena's life hanging in the balance. Can Maverick save her, or will her lust for revenge take all that she has left? Maverick still has an ongoing series past this issue, so he definitely survives. But does Elena? We'll find out. Then, in issue 8, Maverick has to pick up the pieces of his life. He knows that a confrontation with Pushkin is coming, and Pushkin is preparing for that confrontation by hiring the Confessor. See you folks next week.
Everyone, there are a million podcasts vying for your time and attention, and I'd like to thank you for listening to mine. If you would like to get in touch with me, to share a concern, request a series, compliment me, berate me, whatever you like, send me an email at cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.